Hello, friends. My name is Christina Grozik, and I am with a film called Going which is an exploration into the world of sound. And we also touch base on things like vibration and frequency and energy and even silence. So, if you want to find out more about the film, you can check it out at goingomfilm.com, and it's goingomfilm.com. And because all of those topics are so important, we've decided to continue the discussions on them. Been talking with different people about how they use sound and vibration and frequency and silence and why that matters. And today, I am so excited. We've got Jake Stamatis with us. So, hello and welcome, Jake. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Yeah, it's so good to connect with you and touch base. Thank you
Yes.
so much. I understand that you are in rehearsals right now and you've got a big opening coming up this week. So I know it's like that period where it's like, so I really appreciate
Yeah,
you carving out some time.
my
So
pleasure.
yeah, and you, I mean, you're an opera singer, you're a choreographer. You were also part of Going and I don't know if you know this, but I teach synchronicity, and that's one of the things is, that journey for us on Going
Mm.
everything like arranged itself the way it was meant to be. We had a plan, and that like absolutely shifted and changed, and
Yeah.
you were part of that. And we were shooting this while getting those last remnants for the film during that period where COVID was just starting to take form and no one knew what was going on. We were already on the road, and you popped into the room and our crew's already tired. We're driving a ridiculous amount of hours every day and
Mhm.
working very long days, and everyone's already tired with the stress of not knowing what was happening and how this thing was going to unfold. And you walked in and you're beaming with a smile and your energy, and you created this amazing song for us and shared your gifts with us
Mm.
that day. And I think it just really gave everyone a boost, and we're like, yeah, let's go next city. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing everything that you do. It was really a special moment for sure. So,
Oh, thank you. It was special for me too. It was cool to be a part of that project, and like you said, it was not the original plan for me either. There was someone else lined up to do it, and just like schedules worked out where I ended up filling in, and I'm so happy I did. And so much of what I've learned over the past year, 15, 16 months, however long we've been enduring since that period when we first met, right at the beginning of this pandemic, um, has so much of what we've been doing and what I've been a part of has been seeing, how what I bring to the table can lift people up in these crazy times and like what my music can do to excite people and to, take a to offer a reprieve from our daily worries. So I'm glad to see that was helpful for your crew there at the end of what I'm sure was a really long period on the road. So I'm really happy to hear that.
yeah, it was fantastic, and it was like that jolt that everyone needed to like continue on and
Mm.
carry it forward, right? So, and I know it's funny because even afterwards, we made a stop at Trader Joe's to get water and supplies
Yep.
for the road, and we get back in the car and they're like, "We saw Jake in Trader Joe's." And everyone was so excited. So, and that speaks to the gift that you gave us. So it was like that jolt that we needed, like I said. So yeah, I appreciate
Mhm.
that. So how does one decide, I think I'm going to be an opera singer?
So a lot of folks have a different path. Mine was certainly different from a lot of my peers and colleagues. I was in middle school, I believe. I just started fifth grade, and in my school system, that was middle school. And my older sisters had both done choir in school, and we had the option to do chorus band or a study hall. And I was a shy kid. I was afraid of making decisions. I struggled a lot with like personal shame and like risk of like falling into shame. So it seemed like a safe bet to follow what my older siblings had done. So that took me into choir, and I loved it. I wasn't good at it. I tell people this all the time that I actually was tone deaf at the beginning of my singing. It was something I enjoyed to do and loved to do, but I couldn't match pitch. So when singing in a group, when you're all supposed to be singing the same pitches together, that, created some cacophony. But in the public school system, you know, it's not going to make or break anything as long as the kid's enjoying what they're doing. And I loved to sing. So it wasn't until I got into high school that a friend of mine introduced me to the drama department and I started doing musicals, which led to more opportunities to sing on my own. And when that came up, it was my music teacher who decided to really give me time and attention outside of class to help cultivate my singing skills and really teach me how to match pitch, even, or, to learn more because they could tell that I had a great interest in it and that it was something that I loved to do. So from there, I was just hooked on singing and music. And like I had said, I was a shy kid, but I loved expressing myself musically. And, it was a place where I could be loud and feel confident. And so I really leaned into that, and that took me into school. Originally, I wanted to be a choir teacher, just like the mentors who, supported me and my gift and my passions. But once I had gotten into school, I went to Susquehanna University, which is in Pennsylvania, and I was starting my music education degree, and it's known for its music ed. It's not a big conservatory or anything. So the performing opportunities are available to everyone, not just the people on the performance track. And so I had the opportunity to do my first opera. And so I was like, I'll do this. I liked the school plays. I like singing classical music. So I'll give it a try and see if I like it, put it all together. And I loved it, and it really hooked me in. I love What I love about classical music is it seems almost like a puzzle. It's got sort of an Olympic element to it too, because everything is just so extreme and so pumped up. And the technique and the execution are really the puzzle part to it that I just find so fascinating. And then to put that on to larger than life dramas just felt so satisfying for me as a kid who was looking for ways to express himself. So that really was the beginning of it all. That's what got me hooked.
Oh, I love that. I love, that you followed the path of your sisters and then you had the
Mhm.
mentor in school that kind of pulled you aside and said, hey, let's work one-on-one. It's amazing
Yes.
one person, the difference that they can make, right? With
Yes. Oh, I say this all the time because I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, but it's something I feel really passionate about is because it was that like public school music teacher that like changed like the whole course and direction of my life and like brought me to where I am today. And I don't even know if my old high school has a music program anymore. And or at least it's definitely been defunded, and you see that happening all across the country too. And it really gets me because I was not a kid who was gifted naturally. I did not have inclinations or interest in this art on my own or through my family, and so I just would not have found my way without them. So I'm so appreciative of them, and I always advocate for public school music programs whenever I can. So sorry to hijack your platform for that this morning.
no. I mean that, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's so valuable. And by having someone help you find that voice, right, it
Mhm.
opened up a whole new world for you. And actually,
Yes.
when we were in Memphis as well, that's where you and I connected. But when we
Mhm.
were in Memphis, we interviewed Christian Ross from Graceland. And
Mm.
I was really surprised to find out that Elvis was actually very, very shy. And the music is what broke him out too,
Yes.
helped him find his voice. And I was like, what? How could he be shy? You see him on stage. But it's amazing the journey that someone goes through. And you never really know the journey that someone goes through until you take the time to get to know them a bit, right? But
Right.
I'm so thankful that you had this mentor that helped you connect with your voice and opened up this whole new world for you, and that you're doing what you're doing. So it's such a treat and such a gift. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I want to kind of move into some of the things, like some of the ways that an opera singer trains. So I understand, I did some research on this, and I
Mhm.
understand that breath work has a role in this. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the breathing exercises you would do to train?
Yes, absolutely. I when talking on like a base level, trying to explain, what opera singing is like, or really what any sort of singing is like, it's as if you were a trumpet, for instance, and the sound is not going to come out unless you blow air through it. And so, really, air is key to phonation when it comes, especially to what we're doing. And opera is a 400 plus year old art form, so it has a long history that the bulk of its history actually was before amplification. And so the goal was always to be how much sound can we make just with the human body, just maximizing the human resonating chambers and air production. And not always, it doesn't always mean blowing a ton of air through your resonators, but how do we have to pace our air in order to make a sound that is audible 4,000 seats back, but also is flexible and musical and can have variation. And, they really find that the air is a big part of that, and how you pace it and how you get it moving in its freedom, but also in its control. So it's bonkers to think about. And your work on your breath never really ends. I would not say I've mastered my breath. It's something that you're always looking to, critique, and it grows with you as your body grows and ages. How you're approaching your breath use also has to grow and age in order to maximize what your current body can produce as far as phonation. So it's very, very never ending work, but it's something that's definitely worth it, I think, for me in the end. So they talk a lot about, on a base level, breathing into the diaphragm. Now we know that the air goes into the lungs, it's not going into your diaphragm, but it's the mental thought of getting a nice low breath that expands the belly, that drops the pelvic floor, that gets the ribs to splay outward. And it's that full like allowance of breath to enter and to be maximized, and then comes the pacing of the exhalation. And let's say you have to sing a long phrase where you can't take a breath for 10, 15, 20 seconds or something like that, but then also you have to get all of this text out, which takes its own special spurts of air. So you want to make sure that you're saving air for the whole thing. I always imagine when an accordion is being played, they don't just go blam and get everything. If they want to expand the whole phrase, they have to make sure that they're keeping it going. Or billows, sort of feeding a fire. And so learning to pace, keeping that activation in your muscles as they drop and expand, and you're letting the air in. How can I keep all that out so I don't just go foof? How can I get this going? So engaging the whole abdomen in its process of pacing the air, the muscles that are keeping the lungs open and letting them close slowly as opposed to closing quickly. It's how does the lower back get involved? How does the pelvic floor get involved? Where is there tension and where should there be release? The voice is a really interesting instrument because it's internal. It's all functioning inside, and there are some things we can see outside in order to diagnose um, how the phonation is occurring and whether or not it's most optimal. But for the majority, it's feeling, it's how you sense it inside your body, which I just find so fascinating. So, a deep connection to your body and your inner workings and the sensations that you feel that you can't see is pivotal when it comes to opera singing or singing of any genre. That just happens to be the genre that I am most versed in. So air phonation is air production is exactly the same. How can I take it in? What tension is helpful and what tension just needs to be released?
I love it. And the way you're describing that. So, I'm also an integrated holistic health coach. So, one of the things I teach people is how to connect with their mind, body, and spirit. And breath work is a big part of that. And the way you
Hmm.
described it, it's like you said, feeling. It's feeling where
Yes.
it's moving in the body, how it's
Hmm.
moving in the body. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm sensing some opera yoga coming on.
I could say I actually have practiced yoga, and I will say that I still do. I'm someone who prefers an in-person class, and uh, I just find that I'm able to be much more mindful and to get much deeper into my practice as opposed to over Zoom, even though that became an excellent and necessary resource for many people's practices, especially during the pandemic. So it's been a while since I've taken class, but it has helped me in a lot of my processes. But while um, while I was deeper in my practice of yoga, I actually discovered a lot of my breath for my singing, which I just thought was so amazing because it was a time when I was really sitting and being still and being conscious of it. And it's that consciousness that is sometimes hard to encourage a young singer to really tap into, especially in the America, because I feel like we're so go, go, go. And, everything's moving. We have to be productive in order to feel like a fully participating member of society. And it was in the stillness of a yoga practice that I actually discovered my more optimal breath for my career, for my profession, but also my passion. And I just thought that was so interesting. So yes, as soon as you said opera yoga, it's something that I've realized for myself that all that is good for yoga is also good for opera singing. And I have a feeling that spans out even further into our lives too. So I just really wanted to say, yes, I agree with that.
That's fantastic for sure. Yeah, and I think what's the phrase? Be still and know, right? So
Yes.
stillness we find so much, and I
Oh,
think
yes.
some of the exercises, if I understand correctly, for opera, I practiced some of them yesterday because I was like, oh, that's interesting, and it's amazing because some of the videos I was watching, they encouraged you to put your hands in certain places so you could actually
Yes.
feel it. And they felt so different, like taking a four breath in and then
Mhm.
releasing with a staccato, the S.
Yes.
And you can really feel that. And then it changes when you take in that breath and then it's a long S out. So instead of the staccato, it's the S. Totally different
Yes.
feeling. And when you really get in touch with the body and feel it, you're like, wow, that's magic the way that's moving, right?
Yes. And what I think is so interesting too is that, we're creating sentences, we're telling stories in opera. Opera is all storytelling, it's all human experience. And um, even the stories from 400 years ago are still relevant today. It's just really something so interesting. But we're streaming together these sentences that have to make sense, which means we're utilizing all of those sounds, sometimes like rapidly one after the other, in order to keep a flowing vocal line that is beautiful and emotionally expressive. The emotions are in the music, and then the communication is in the text. So really balancing something that's different from my, singing is like being a trumpet, like metaphor, is that all of a sudden we have communication as an element, like actual words that we want to get people to hear and react to and participate in. So it's all of those sounds, the all and then add vowels and then add different consonants, which do different things with the tongue, which require different breath pressure, which require a different release or a different containment. I just find so interesting and again infinitely in need of more work, which is exciting. It's a practice. Singing is really a practice as well.
Yeah, I think life in general is a practice.
There you go. Yes.
And I saw on CBS this morning, they did a piece on COVID survivors and COVID survivors with the chronic symptoms after COVID, right?
Mm,
And I guess there is a woman, Susie Zumpa, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's with the English Nationals Opera. And
mm,
she's a singing coach, but she's working with these patients and doing those opera breath work exercises with them to help them combat those long-term symptoms. And I just thought that was so fascinating and interesting how connected everything is. So you had mentioned movement too and the way it's hitting in the body. So are there movement exercises that you do to, help hone your exercise and your practice as an
mhm.
opera singer?
Um, it's kind of funny because now um in my practicing and in my development of my own voice, I'm actually trying to find more stillness. And you know this about me from reading my bio, if anywhere else, that have been a dancer in my life and a choreographer for a long period of time. So as far as like incorporating my body into music, that was really something that I had had a lot of experience in, and was another big expression outlet for me growing up and into my collegiate years. And for a long, long time. It's been a while since I've taken a class, but I'm looking to get into a ballet class like pretty soon because it's something I love and want to keep maintaining in my life. So, um, as far as movement, movement was always a big part of my practice for a long time. Your body is your instrument, and in its flexibility, you can find greater access. And there's just so much more available to you from your instrument if it is, warm, if it is limber, if it is strong. So I think anything that's good for your physical health is always going to be good for your singing. Stretching before you're singing and making sure that all of these muscles here are relaxed and flexible, and including into your body as well. And your back can be very important. Back, shoulders, everything. Posture is a very important thing when it comes to singing because the alignment of your internal organs and of your spine is going to influence your resonance, what you have access to. So, as far as preparing the body to sing, that's all very important. But like I had alluded to or said clearly, I am looking to access more stillness now. And that can only come from a place of relaxation, of flexibility, of bodily readiness, and it's interesting to see how movement serves the voice and serves operatic singing, but then also stillness is an element that needs to be accessed as well. And so I feel like that is the response that came to me first because it's where I'm at now in my own practice, is to see, okay, but how still can I be? How much can I communicate through just the sound as opposed to the gesture, where gesture is so important in any theater? What happens if I utilize something that is unique to this art form, which is sound, and um, the sort of the color and the palette of sounds that are available in opera? What happens if I try to tell the story without the movement, but with the voice, with the air movement, with the vocal movement, with the traveling through resonators? What story does that tell on top of gesture? So that was where the question of movement took my brain at this point in the morning.
I love that so much. And I think it's, life is definitely a practice, like you had said earlier. And,
Mm,
it's about finding that balance too. So there are periods where we do need more movement and other periods where we need more stillness. So it's
mm,
finding what you need in the moment. But I would think just through all the different practices and rituals that you go through to hone your skills, that, I mean, you would be very in tune with your body. So if there is a period where, and I don't know if there's ever been a period for you like this,
mm.
but I can say that if I need to be physically active, and if I am not, if I'm on a job and there's a couple day span that goes by and I don't really get movement in my day,
Yes.
it changes. I'm not able to focus as well. I get maybe a little bit cranky. I don't know if other people would say that. They
Mm,
are probably just like, oh, she's very quiet. I get really quiet because I can
mm.
feel it coming on, right? So
Yes.
I get a little out of balance when I'm not moving. So how about you? If you go through a period, and has there ever been a period where maybe you take a time off from singing and practicing, do you feel a difference in your body?
I do think that sedentary periods really don't serve me, and that was a big risk in um, pandemic times, especially at the peak when we were really homebound, which had its benefits as well. But with everything going on to Zoom for a long period of time and everything being from the home and often from like a seated position, I will say, like, singing takes a lot of energy, and your body, in order to produce big and impactful sound, takes so much energy. And I've really found that when I'm in periods that are sedentary, in periods where I'm very much in one place, there's not a lot of movement, there's not a lot of keeping up with my practice, that can make me very lethargic and really doesn't serve my artistry. or even just like the general production of my voice. The body has to be nimble and limber in order to really work its best. And I mean, I am lucky to be in a position where I get a lot of joy out of singing, just sort of like personally. Like it's what I do for my profession, but it's also kind of my hobby in a sense, because even I find myself all the time singing things, even if, it's not what I have coming up, just to like bring some joy for myself. And that's good. I feel like that is meaning, good things. Like maybe I've made some choices that were right for me. And I think that's great. So it's very rare that I go long periods of time without singing. I do have peers and colleagues who do, and it is right for them to do that, and it is healing and supports them and their mental health, and I think that's excellent. Uh, Myself, it's very rare that I go very long without singing, without getting into my practice, and without engaging in what my body needs to do that. Because I will say, if you're sick or something as an opera singer, if you catch a cold, it's so easy to feel useless, like to really feel like you can't participate in what you love to do. And I am currently on a job in the Adirondacks, thus the like lush background behind me. And I have done this job before. It's a festival in the summer. And while I was here back in 2019, I had lost my voice. I had a very bad like bout with allergies, and I had completely lost my voice, and it was very little phonation was available to me. And it can be sort of depressing. So I mean, suppose this is one way to go at this, because this was almost like a forced period of rest and of not being able to be in my practice. I'm sorry if you hear some folks behind me, but
Life.
so yeah, it's live diegetic sound, and so that was a sort of forced period like that where I had to take a break and to rest in order for my body to recover, and it is like sort of depressing in some ways, because like I just said, it's very rare that I'm not singing, and my brain's constantly going like, "Ooh, I want to get to the piano and like see how this feels and what this sounds like." And oh, I just had an idea. What if I stand in this posture or take or approach my breath, with consideration to my lower back instead of my ribs, always sort of thinking about that in the process. So during that forced period of rest, it really brings you down, and it brings my energy down too. And I think a risk of doing any sort of art, I wonder if you experience this yourself, actually, Christina, is that in putting so much of yourself into it, in moments where it's not going well, or where there are, like shortcomings, or you have to take a break or something, it can really be hard to separate yourself and your own happiness and joy from your art. I've encountered that a few times, and so that can be very challenging in moments where you have to rest, where you have to stop and take time. So what that has equaled in myself and my daily practices and how I live my life is I care much more about my physical health than I think I would. And I have friends, of course, I have, friends and loved ones outside the field who maybe, would enjoy like a late night at the bar, and, I'll have a drink with friends and things like that, of course. But, or, go out screaming and yelling at a football game, or, you like any sort of thing. Or not prioritize sleep, for instance. That's a common one. And I've just found that the feelings I get when I don't keep my body optimally healthy, uh, and what that does to how I'm able to participate in my art and the passion and things that I really enjoy and love. Um, I found that has been sort of a push for me to be more physically healthy in order to protect that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. It totally makes sense seeing that,
Hmm.
all of these things are connected. It's all connected. So
Yes.
when one area goes out of order, it's like this trickle down effect and it starts impacting
Yes.
other areas. And I think, with all of the research that's coming out and the science now behind things like breath work, like vocal toning, and the chemicals that
Hmm.
are being released actually make us feel really good and
Yes.
focused. It's like science is finally catching up with the things that we knew. Well, I feel really good when I'm singing or,
Hmm.
breathing or moving, right? But now we've got the science aspect behind that to prove it. And then from a listener side, I mean, some of the benefits, according to the healthy.com, of listening to classical music and opera, right?
Mm.
Lowers blood pressure, it promotes better sleep, it helps to improve your memory, it relieves anxiety, it increases productivity, and it encourages relaxation. And I was like, when I was reading that list, I was like, yes, 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 yes. So, yeah, I'm like, right on. So, let me ask you about performance, right? When you are performing and you are on that stage, because
Mm.
everything is energy, right? So, when you're performing, how much does the energy of the audience impact your performance, if it does at all?
It does. And it's sort of funny because if you were to be in like what would be standardly considered an operatic performance situation, you're on the proscenium stage, the audience is in front of you in the house, and you have lights shining down onto you, etc., etc. The lights, more often than not, will block will sort of obscure your view of the audience. A lot of the time, I can't see the people out there in the seats because of how the lights are situated. They're shining onto my face so that I'm properly lit and everyone can see me. But what that means is that there's a big glare in front of where people are. But the energy in the room is always, 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 always able to be picked up by the people on the stage. I always know, or I always can sense how a house is feeling and how the people are vibing with us. And, I do a lot of comedy, and that can be so rewarding because comedy is something where if it's really going, you get a response that you can hear and that you can recognize as a positive response. It's that burst of laughter, or the show comes to a complete halt because like people are just going wild in the house. That's happened a few times, and it's joy bringing, really. Not only are we like providing the impetus for that joy, but then we also feel the joy because it's that reciprocation. Like, oh, we like they loved that joke, like that really worked out, and them laughing at that, like, brings me joy and brings me energy that then propels me forward. On the flip side of that, um if I'm in a performance where I can really feel like the audience isn't getting it, quote unquote, you know, not to say like there's anything lacking on either side, but it's just not connecting. You can really tell. There's a there's a sort of deadness in the vibrations, and if you're able to catch a glimpse, of course, any body language from folks, say in like the front row or something, will give it away too. But you can really sort of sense when folks are checked out. And I really think it's that like deadness of vibration. And what we're aiming to do is to create a like moment to moment connectivity where folks are tracking how the or tracking a progression where it's almost like I don't want to look away because I don't want to miss what's coming next. I feel like that's really the sort of engagement we're always looking for, and it's very difficult to maintain, and it takes a lot of concentration and focus on our side on the stage. But uh, it's because we can sort of tell how things are going that we're always looking to see how we can maintain that connection, how to keep it buzzing.
So,
It's all very abstract. I don't know if that makes any sense.
no, it totally, everything you said totally made sense. Yeah, so it's, some nights the audience is going to resonate with you, some nights it's
Yeah.
not. Sometimes certain people are, sometimes they're not. So in that moment, if you have, let's say, an extreme case, so you were talking about keeping focus, but if you have an extreme case where someone all of a sudden has a coughing fit or a sneezing fit, or
Mm.
there's chatter going on and people are talking during your performance, if any
Hmm.
things have ever happened, or even on your end as the performer, like your voice cracks in the middle of something, or how do you like maintain your focus through those periods?
So that is challenging, and it takes great practice. And especially if it's a slip up, or a vocal crack, or you fall down, or a part of your costume rips or something like that, anything, then we're incorporating shame into the mix, which can be a very challenging barrier. um, and this is always going to be a risk with stage actors because it's such a vulnerable spot. We're putting ourselves into a position to be looked at, where like we're literally, the goal is that everyone looks at me, and that is very, very vulnerable. And while I have like some extroverted tendencies, I'm like pretty introverted, and it's a controlled element. We rehearse a lot so that we're able to have solid ground under us, just in case something happens, in case there's a slip. There's a support system of rehearsal, of practice, of understanding. Again, we're storytellers, so it's keeping the through line of the story we're telling, so that if there's a slip up, if there's a mistake, we know where to return to in order to keep things going. Opera and any sort of musical theater is especially challenging because the music continues. If I have a vocal moment and I have to stop, the orchestra is still playing and they're still going forward. We can't all stop together and then like start again together. So you sort of have to hop on, but again, that is all from practice, and it is this rehearsal and understanding of what you're doing that you can sort of use as a cushion of comfort to say, like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Even if there is a problem, I know I can rely on my preparation in order to keep me going. Now, if the audience isn't vibing, if they're distracted, if someone takes a phone call in the middle of the show or something like that, that can be very distracting. And myself as a performer, it's not my responsibility to intervene in that distraction. It is too bad. It can be too bad, and it can, take the audience out of it, which can be, pretty disappointing, especially if people have paid a lot of money to be there. If people were really engaging in the storytelling we were doing, that can be a disappointment to be jarred out of that by someone else's behavior. But in a moment like that, all I can do is try and stay as focused as possible for those people who want to engage with what I'm offering. And it's not even and not even always to say it's like someone being rude. It could be a mistake. It could be a coughing fit. It could be a medical emergency. And it's all valid, but in the end, like, we're human beings dealing with human beings, and participating in the arts um, is a big magnifying glass into that. Opera, we're always talking about human relationships. It always has to do with our community and interactions and how people live together. So um, a part of that is learning how to live with unexpected human action. And so that's a pretty remarkable learning point for all of us. And it's easy to get frustrated with things like that. Oh, it ruined my performance, which is something that I have felt a lot. But it's recent years where I've started to take the selfishness less. There is a selfish element to it. We can't help it. We are the star of our own stories. Our reality is reality, etc., etc. But um to to relieve myself of that, it is not always serving me, and to let it be, what am I doing and how does it serve the community around me? And the community around me includes people who have to cough or who have to take a phone call. So I think that is helpful with pivoting in a situation like that is unexpected. Preparation, but then also an understanding of humanity.
Yeah, it's a practice, right? And it keeps life
Yes.
interesting. I mean, if everything went swimmingly all the time, we would have no fun stories to share, right? So
Yes. Oh, and
we would
yes. And we also make hilarious stories.
and yeah, there's the growth aspect. So what inspires you?
So I had thought for a while. This was a few years back. I was at my point in emotional and mental growth where I was having my what's the point of us being here on this planet, sort of thought process. And the where I sort of fell, and something that I'm still carrying with me, and we'll see if it grows, if it develops, if it changes, um, is that I sort of decided that the point of humanity is community, is coming together and interacting with each other and sort of slogging through the human existence. And so community is big for me. I feel in my I am participating as an opera singer, and that is great, and there's all the special things that come with that, with its technical versatility and virtuosity, and with its history, and with the international element of it. Always I'm singing like five or six different languages, and all of that is really special. And for me, it always links back to community. I had really struggled for a while with um, common enemy bonding. It's still something that I struggle with. It's the idea of two people creating a friendship built off of a mutual hate for someone or something else. Say like, "Oh my God, can you believe she said that today? Oh, I was thinking the same thing." And then every time those people meet, it's always, like, "Oh, she's annoying me today. Yeah, me too." And that becomes a bonding point, but it is grown from like it's grown from like a participation in hatred that I don't think it doesn't serve me. And it was something that distressed me for a long time. And it's easy to fall into, but I just sort of couldn't put like a word on it. And so when I think of, what's the point of singing opera and presenting these stories or doing any sort of theater, I really think it is to generate an understanding, a compassion for people. We're telling stories of people who are from a time period different than ours, that are wearing clothes different than ours, that are maybe that look different than you do. You're seeing this, you're participating not only in their story, but in their emotional arc. Opera's all about emotions. And like what the orchestra playing is not just background music to give us a key to sing into. It is the unspoken element of the story, is the orchestra. It's the waves that come out. And I think that that lends itself to being a really amazing opportunity for developing compassion for someone who isn't like you, or someone who maybe is having a story different than yours, but something that you can relate to. Ooh, I've been in a situation like that. Yes, I remember my loved one died last year, and I'm seeing this story that's putting this character who I don't know in, and they're in a similar situation to mine. I think it creates a unique opportunity for compassion, and I that's really big for me when I think, outside of me having fun and singing pretty and going to beautiful locations, what's the actual point of what I'm doing? And I have sort of fallen there now. So I think that's a big inspiration for my participation in this art. And it's a big drive for me. And it's started to, spread out into my interpersonal relationships too. And I'm happy about that. So I think that that's a big inspiration for me, is trying to develop compassion and to create opportunities for emotional education in storytelling, which I think is a beautiful way to reach people.
Oh, Jake, that is so beautiful. That really is beautiful. And just the connectedness of that and the compassion. I mean, if everyone could put each other like in each other's shoes, if we could
Yeah.
all like be in one another's shoes, I mean, we would see everything differently, right? So
Hmm.
I always try to get both sides of the story when there's, if there's something that doesn't settle with me, I'm like, well, why is that? So I will go
Hmm.
talk to that person or that group and say, so educate me, tell me where you're coming from, why is this,
Yes.
and walk away without judgment. But now I know, and I think when we can break down those walls and open it up and try to understand one another, it's at the end of the day we all want the same things.
Yeah.
So I love that
Yes.
take on it, and that's what you're doing, absolutely. So let me ask you this. What are some of your favorite sounds? Like when you hear them, it could be music, it could be nature, it could be anything. But when you hear them, it just feels like all is right in the world.
I have a a special love for the sound of a lawnmower. This is so bizarre, but that takes me right back to summers growing up as a kid, and my dad would get up early and mow the lawn, and it was a like calm time. And it also connects to my sense of smell too, because fresh cut grass is like a big like happiness trigger for me, specifically because of these moments. Like I even like picture like myself in my childhood bedroom when I hear a lawnmower in the distance, because it just like puts me there. So it's summertime, it's easy, it's rest, relaxation, it's beautiful weather. Like that really takes me there is the sound of a lawnmower. It's just so bizarre. Not like right next to me, but sort of in the distance. So that's always like a funny little sound that I like to um connect to. Also, light rain. Just sort of like the like drip drop rain, like trickly rain, is a similar thing. That's a youth memory for me. Sitting in my kitchen next to the window and like just hearing like the drip drops like outside because we always have our windows open, and so that's always a big connection for me. Um, I had a pretty special moment in high school, which actually influenced me to get into singing. I was singing, of course, in choir. I had started years earlier and was working on developing my skills, but this was really the point when I decided, oh no, I need to do this. I need to do this all the time. Like I feel called to this. I was singing a choral piece by a composer named Eric Whitacre, which if anyone has ever been a choir nerd, you know who Eric Whitacre is because he is just like the pinnacle of any high school choir nerd. He's just so fantastic. But he writes really interesting music where he uses sort of the like sort of funny term for it is it's like oven mitt chords where it's just like these clusters, but what they do, these like giant chord clusters. So imagine if you were to hit you were to strike keys on the piano and it was all these keys right next to each other. It just creates this like warm sort of moment where the frequencies are all so close together. It's not necessarily spread out into like a triad, which sounds very harmonious and very calming and very organized. It's this combination of the triads in there. So there is the harmony in there, but also included is all the notes in between, which have tension and which have like much higher like vibrations because of the closeness of the frequencies. So I had been singing one of his pieces and was in a large choir, and we hit this amazing chord. It's called Water Night is the name of his piece. It's I think it's an Octavio Paz poem, I can't remember, but it hit this amazing chord that was a 13 note um harmony. So we were all the singers were split into 13 parts essentially. So each of us were singing different notes in this chord, and it was that participation in where I was singing just one thing, but next to me, the person right next to me was singing something that was discordant to what I was singing, but it all participated in this larger scheme that created this wave, this like soundscape that was so exciting. It moved me to tears. The vibrations were so close that I could feel it in my body actively as a teenager. And just how it was resonating within me and that tension that was literally next to me as all of my colleagues we were shoulder to shoulder, and that was so exciting. I will never forget it. It was the big moment in music where I burst into tears and knew, I have to keep doing this and I want to keep seeking that. And, it's not always easy to find, but it's the seeking of that sensation that I got from that sound of myself and my fellow singers putting putting the pieces together that created a greater soundscape that was so exciting, and it really turned me on to what is powerful in music and in vocalizing in a group.
That sounds like a really special moment, and
It
I
was
love
awesome. Oh my gosh.
this. And I don't think I've ever heard anyone. We did a lot of man on the street interviews, and no
Mhm.
one has ever said a lawnmower, but it makes so much sense when you described it because it that the memory and the music, the
Mhm.
connection there is so powerful. So I
Yeah.
love the way you just illustrated all of that. So thank you. And I know
Absolutely.
we're getting close on time, so let me ask you this: how do you think sound will be used in the future?
I think it's interesting. I think people more and more are you sort of mentioned this, that the science is catching up with the good feelings we feel when we participate with sound. And I think more and more it's going to continue to be incorporated. Sound has so much influence on our mood and on our feeling and on our reception of information. And I think it has so many positive uses that we can continue to incorporate. And I see that just continuing. I'm in an ancient art form, you could say. It's still happening today. There are living composers making new operas as we speak. It's happening. And one of the shows we're actually doing here in the Adirondacks is a world premiere. So it'll be its first time performed. And but it's an ancient art form. And participating in that as a 30-year-old person in 2021, participating in something that is 400 years old and singing opera from composers who wrote them 300, 400 years ago. If that has taught me anything, is that there are people out there, and there have been, who have known that sound can really influence us. Like I had said, the music element of opera, outside of the text and outside of the words we're saying, the music teaches us too. It shows us the inner workings of the person. It illustrates emotion for us. It generates an emotional response from us as listeners. And even outside of emotional, it creates a bodily response from us as listeners. And I think that it's so amazing to listen back and be like, oh my gosh, Mozart totally knew that. And I'm only just learning this. And Beethoven, he did this because he knew it like that is expressing this emotion, and it's something we will hear, and we may not be able to put words to it, but we will feel it, we will know, and our bodies will react to it in a way that will communicate this emotion, communicate this story, give us compassion for this character. And so it's amazing for me to think about that it's something that people have been tapped into for so long, and it's still being incorporated more and more into our modern day society. So I'm so excited to see that continue. I think sound can really influence our day-to-day lives in a positive, sometimes in a negative way. And I think that the attention to that, the appreciation of that, and the respect for the true response that a human body can have to a sound will only create more fulfilling life for all of humanity. I really think so. The more we harness that, the more we can support each other.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's very humbling when we look at everything that people knew before us, right? And we look at
Yeah,
the big picture. It's very humbling that it's like, oh, I'm just discovering this and
and
they
just discovering.
for
Yeah.
so long. So, all right. So, Jake, I know we're wrapping up here, but can
Mhm.
you walk us through? Would you be up for doing a breath exercise with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure, I could give that a try. Now I'm no teacher, but all right. So let's see how this all goes. So
Okay.
when I'm thinking about breath for opera, we're looking to fill up the lungs, um, in its completeness. So often a breath can be kind of short in our day to day. Like we don't need a lot of air, so it'll just come into our chest. So if we're thinking about filling up the lungs so completely, now while the air may not actually travel into like the lower levels of our body, it's the expansion that is creating space for it to really get to the edges of our lungs. So if we're thinking like that's a really shallow breath which has energy which we could utilize in some ways for color, but if we want to optimize, I really want to get us down into our ribs. So find the center of your ribs, this sort of xiphoid process. That's where they meet, right here underneath your sternum, and then follow your bottom rib out and get right here underneath your bottom rib. Now, what we want to feel is from this xiphoid process, from this middle area, we want to feel you rock out from there. And this will create an expansion out of your ribs. So as we inhale, rock outward, and then exhale. And now, when we do that, another element, if we want to keep and work on pacing the breath, like I talked earlier, as you exhale, try and keep the ribs rocked out. See what happens when you engage your muscles in that way. And let's exhale onto an S. So let's see, find your xiphoid process, work out. You've got this bottom rib, so you're going to rock out in that direction. Let's inhale to rock and and start to analyze, maybe, was I able to keep that expansion in my rib cage? I am, but that is a practice that I do all the time. And what does that do? This expansion of muscles is keeping your lungs is keeping your lungs open, so that it's as if you're letting a little air out of the balloon on the top. Like the whole balloon doesn't go and then it's all gone. It's just letting a little out, only what you need for phonation, for creation of the sound and a consistent S. So let's try it one more time. We've got our center point. We've got our bottom rib. We're here on the side. The ribs will rock out from the center and then maintain that expansion and legato S. No interruptions to that S. We want to keep it going for as long as possible. And inhale. Release.
That was so awesome.
Little impromptu something.
I loved it. Yeah, thank you. I mean, just really getting in touch with your body and how you utilize sound and how you can maximize that and
Yes.
the practice of it. So, yeah, thank you so much. So, Jake Stamatis, where can people find you?
Sure, I am all over the place. You can find, like, when it comes to social media, I am Jake Stamatis on Facebook. I am J Stamat, so just JSTAMAT on Instagram. My website is www.jakestamatis.com. I believe I have my name on the Zoom window here if you need some spelling. It is a Greek last name, and I don't run into a lot of stomatises, so I understand if some spelling help is needed. So jakestamatis.com for my website. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. There's a little box for contacting at the bottom of my homepage on my website. So reach out to me if you have any questions or want to follow up or just say hey or talk to me about your participation with sound and any questions you have for me. I'd be happy to answer.
Or listen and watch some of your awesome performances that are on a really very cool website. So yes, thank you for that. And someday, Jake, we will be doing a opera yoga class together. So
Yes,
the movement part, and you can teach the expansion and the breathing and
I would love that.
possibly. So that would be fun. And I know my friend Desiree Middleton, who is a screenwriter in LA,
Mm,
she lives and breathes opera. So we
fabulous.
come to you one of your performances at some point when the stars align. So, but thank you so much for taking the time out today and for sharing
My
all
pleasure.
great information. It's so good to connect with you again, and hopefully I will see you in person sooner than later. But thank you so much for everything. Very, very
Thank you.
appreciate it. So, all right, Jake. Well, best of luck with the launch, with the opening nights, and yeah, sending good vibes your way.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm receiving them and reciprocating. This was such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye bye.